Corla, and obviously this question is a similar one to that posed by Deputy McLaughlin, and while I agree with the Minister that there are multiple reasons why we have the large number of refugees that we have, the predominant reason is caused by Western instigated wars and exploitation in countries like Libya, Syria, Eritrea and so on. So I suppose while I'm very glad that the Daly and the Irish Naval Services have rescued people in the Mediterranean, we need to dig deeper. We need to look at what happens to those people after they're rescued and what's their role in that, and what are the conditions that are leading them to be refugees in the first place, and do we have a role in that too?
Well, just to answer the question that was put down, but I'll come back to the refugee issue. Just to be clear, the Eliathna is not engaged in Operation Triton or in any other form of border security operation as part of its deployment in the Mediterranean. Section 3 of the Defence Amendment Act 2006 permits, with the approval of Government, the dispatch of the Naval Service vessel and personnel for humanitarian search and rescue tasks only. It does not permit the carrying out of border control type tasks such as those undertaken by Operation Triton. The deployment of Eliathna following Government approval supports those measures already taken by Italy and other EU states in the area of search and rescue of migrants and the provision of humanitarian assistance as provided under international law. There is no international humanitarian search and rescue operation established by any decision of the international body or national authorities in the Mediterranean, and the Naval Service deployment does not form part of any such operation. Rather, it is the unilateral deployment by Ireland of a Naval Service vessel to the Mediterranean, where it is undertaking humanitarian search and rescue tasks in accordance with the applicable provisions of the international conventions governing search and rescue situations and in coordination with the Italian authorities. The humanitarian crisis in the Mediterranean is of great concern to Ireland and to our EU partners, and the Eliathna and her crew are providing an invaluable asset in assisting with the Mediterranean migrant crisis. And I've given the numbers in terms of, in an incredibly short period of time. This has been a very, very busy and very testing mission. Obviously, on the broader issues, Ireland needs to play its part as part of a European effort, which is what the conversation was all about at the last Foreign Affairs and Defence Council meeting, and we'll continue to do that, and obviously play a part, I hope, as well in sharing some of the burden as regards the migrants and their asylum assessments.
Thank you, Minister.
Applications.
Deputy Daly.
Well, I'm very glad that the Minister has stated clearly that our naval operating, if you like, side by side with that exercise, which is an exercise run operating, if you like, side by side with that exercise, which is an exercise run under Frontex and the EU Border Control Agency. And I think we have to step back and say, since 2013, the humanitarian mission run by the Italians under the Mare Nostrum programme, which they were pressurised by the EU to cease, succeeded in rescuing almost 150,000 people. Now, Operation Triton replaced that, and it is primarily an exercise in border control. So while I appreciate the Minister saying that our forces are not involved in that it's a purely humanitarian mission, then I think we have to examine that a bit further. When those people are taken on board the Eliathna, are they not then, if you like, on Irish sovereign soil? And should they not be under the Refugee Convention of 1951? Should we not be obligated to maybe land them in Malta or Italy for a short period of time to then bring them back to Ireland, where we could look at a resettlement programme, because one without the other is a little bit half-measured.
Thank you, Minister.
I don't know if the Deputy is suggesting that the nearly 1,200 people that have been rescued to date should have been brought back to Ireland, but I think if that were the case, first of all, I think the practicalities of that would mean that we couldn't be effective in the Mediterranean if we had to steam for 4 or 5 days to come back to Cork Harbour or to somewhere else in Ireland. What we're trying to do here is assist in what is a massive task, whereby thousands of people are looking to cross the Mediterranean in boats that aren't fit to cross the River Liffey, never mind the Mediterranean, and are packed onto those boats with no life jackets, no life rafts, in some cases not enough food or water or fuel. And we are trying to essentially provide an emergency response capacity, which doesn't solve all problems, but it solves a part of the problem. And what we're doing is actually using our expertise and professionalism through the Naval Service to rescue those people, take them on board. They're likely to only stay on the Etna for 12 hours or less, or maybe slightly more if we're steaming to an Italian port, so that they can then be disembarked and looked after appropriately.
Thank you, Minister.
In terms of their medium-term medical needs and obviously their application for asylum and so on. And
come back to the Minister.
The legal provisions around that work was obviously explored before we sent the ship to the Mediterranean so we could do it efficiently.
Thank you. Deputy Chair Daly.
To make is the reality is that we have one of the worst records in Europe for refugees being accommodated. I'd have no problem whatsoever with the 1,200 people being resettled in Ireland, or indeed many more than that. They wouldn't have to be transported by the Etna either. The point I'm trying to make is that the idea of them being decamped into a direct provision centre in Italy or Malta isn't the solution either. And Ireland has a part to play in that resettlement programme way beyond what we've already offered ourselves for, because the reality is, whether we like it or not, we're complicit in the fact that these people have been made refugees in the first place by allowing the unlimited and unrestricted access of Shannon Airport to the US military, which has been a considerable destabilising impact on countries like Libya, Syria, obviously Iraq, Afghanistan and so on. So what I'm asking the Minister is there not an argument to say that once they're on the Etna, that they are covered by the Refugee Convention, that we should be looking at granting them asylum, or shouldn't we be looking at taking many more, or do we expect Italy, Greece or Malta to take them all?
Thank you. Minister, to conclude.
Well, first of all, for the record, we're not disembarking any refugees in Malta. This is purely an agreement with Italy, and they're very happy to have Ireland as part of the combined effort in the Mediterranean. It makes sense, though, to actually try and manage numbers in a relatively small number of locations, rather than all over Europe. But there is, and you're right on this, there is a conversation that is underway and needs to be had, and decisions that need to be made on the back of those conversations around how other countries across the European Union can help to share the burden of accommodating successful asylum seekers in different parts of Europe. But I think Ireland needs to be sure that whatever commitment we make, we can actually follow through on, in terms of available accommodation, in terms of the support services that are needed, and so on.
Thank you, Minister.
And I think we will be generous but realistic in terms of what Ireland can do on this.
Thank you, Deputy Sean.